And welcome to another episode of Agentic AI in DevOps. My name is Fernando, and together with me today is Vladimir. And in this session, we are going to talk about the adoption of AI in DevOps engineering, at least based on our experiences, right, Vlad?
Yeah.
So to get us started, go ahead.
Yeah, we find ourselves that maybe different groups in a company have a different expectations of that AI adoption. Maybe for someone, it's look like one single button, like as AI enabled, like as a switch in the company. You know, you open the lights, but at the same time, you open AI. You need just to click it, maybe.
Yeah, true. I think we were looking at news and discussions around like other friends that are engineers and friends that are not, especially in management, and seeing the disconnect, right? Where the management is proposing or is saying to everyone, yeah, we have AI everywhere. Like all my employees have access to AI. And then because they are actually pushed for that, right? Like there's a lot of pressure in the market that your company needs to be AI enabled, which brings to what Vlad is saying, where it looks like a button. But then when you talk to engineers, it's like, yeah, I do have, I don't know, GitHub Copilot, whatever agentic thing you're going to use. But I sort of don't trust what comes out of it. I don't use it that much. So there is a big disconnect, right, between like what is being said at the business level and actually how much engineers, especially, which is our ecosystem, right, are trusting the output and what is coming out of that.
Yeah, because to do time to time, maybe first expression about AI, maybe not first experience is not so great. Engineer maybe try some Copilot or whatever without any settings, without any configuration, because the management just said, "Oh, we give you access, do that somehow." And they try a couple of prompts or whatever. We saw it online or on X on YouTube, and it doesn't work well maybe for that particular case. And no one actually provide any kind of guidance how to make AI adoption organization. It's just a subscription which someone has to purchase from the popular company, and that's it. It exists.
True. Yeah, I have been talking to people who got like a little bit better output out of that, and the journey is usually a bit like that. They start using it, and it's like, yeah, man, I don't know. It gave me like buggy code or stuff that didn't really follow the way that I like to do stuff, so I would rather do it myself. So we are discussing that there is a little bit of this lack of how do you get there, right? Like you are suddenly handed over a tool that promises to do everything, but then where do you start? So I think that adoption path is something that sometimes is lacking. Like in my experience, I went through a similar thing where I started using it. I also felt a bit like, yeah, I'm not sure like if this is actually gonna do the thing the way that I would like to do it. And then over time, like I try to say, what if I can get it to do the part that maybe I don't enjoy as much anymore, which is like really writing every single line of code, let's imagine like this, right? But actually focus more on the thing that I enjoy, which is maybe let's say the solution design or things like this. And then things start to evolve, and then I start to see more value, right?
Yeah, it's correct. Plus, it also depends how we all of us get the tool. Because, for example, I believe me and Fernando, we just buy it for ourselves and start using because we're curious what it is, interesting tool. But it could be completely different if you're at work and you get pushed. So it sometimes create extra pressure. Like I know some companies establish the policies that 75% of the code must be written by AI, which is creates the pressure on the engineers. So they don't give them any kind of space for adopt. You must use it right away somehow.
Yeah, regardless of the quality, right? And these metrics are very interesting. That is just churn out code as fast as you can, right? And it doesn't matter if it's good or not, as long as you're using that. I have seen, I think it was last week, some discussion around the token maxing thing, right? Like last year, this was the idea, right? Like you need indeed to write all the code possible with AI. You need to use tokens. There were like leaderboards inside companies of how many tokens developers were using. And now, like after a few months, there was even a
Yeah.
case in the podcast that I was listening that they had a budget, I think it was like $10 million for AI for the whole year. They burned it in 3 months. And they're like, okay, like this is not really sustainable, right? Or we need to do something here. So this kind of metrics for me, yeah, I don't know if now in 2026, like you still see a lot of this. I heard a lot of that in 2025, right? Like this was like, you need to use it. There is no other
You
discussion.
know,
Have you seen more recent things? What?
I think maybe now this leaderboard is kind of flipped the opposite way because more AI, more your tokens you use, it's become worse for the budget for a company. And I heard many established the limits and some kind of ad, like I say, it sometimes looks like a food allowance for me, but whatever. So it's more about how efficiently you use the tool because yes, we can obviously get like as a big hammer and when try to use it in a wrong way, yes, it will destroy things, but maybe more what you want. So it's why we talk about the AI adoption here. Like, yes, you can just run the most powerful model in the world and ask it to make tiny changes in your code and be happy. Or I notice the behavior when people just click enter every time when AI completes, just to continue, 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 but it's maybe not the way how it's supposed to be. Fernando start mentioning some routines. Maybe the writing code become more routine when it's actually giving the value. In the past, we supposed to do it, supposed to know the syntaxes, read documentation, not anymore. So I think like as maybe this is a first step for the companies to adopt AI. It's find the routine operation because in code writing, I know in a development, it's not always excited things what developers create. Sometimes it's very very routine operations like as with CRUD operations for some API or third party integration, which is very routine. You have to just follow the documentation one to one, or maybe even upgrade from one framework to another, which is very annoying, I believe, for developers and completely routine from the Java 11 to Java 17. Maybe this is kind of a first steps where AI going to be useful.
Yeah, I think that this is a great way to kind of go or cross that first like barrier of feeling like, can this actually be useful for me, right? Because I think if you go online, like for me now it's crazy. You open YouTube, is like, Opus 5 is out and it changes everything, and then tomorrow is like I don't know, Lone Cat 2.0 is out and it's insane. Like there's so much hype that I think as engineers, at least I see in my circle, we have a lot of resistance towards this kind of hype stuff, right? Like right away you see like, okay, it's just like people going crazy just to collect views or whatever. But there is definitely like a useful things in there. And how do you can jump that, let's say, first challenge is to pick something that needs to get done that's more mechanical, like this, maybe a small migration, a refactoring, and use it to run that code where you know what you want at the end, and then you can see the value, right? So something that might take you like 2 days that you would need to understand and do all of that, you might refactoring like 20 minutes and having proper testing and the things that we already use as engineers, you can validate the outcome, right? Without having to go through the minutia of every single line of code and rethinking the logic and all of that. I think that's a great way to kind of start using it, right?
Yeah, I think it's a very good idea actually to start in the places where we know the input and we know the output, but for some reason we need to change black box in between. And we can also separate if you talk about the coding. For example, we can leave tests in place and not touch them and only touch the code. So we know code was tested, we know how it was before. We need a little bit tweak, maybe because of some dependency become outdated. I know it's happened in the world. Some kind of library just decide that they're not going to support some another version of something anymore. So you have to migrate to another one or even to same one, but major upgrades, there's breaking changes. I think it's a good starting point, because it creates some kind of uncertainty, of course, because we don't know how the tool gonna be behave, but at least not everywhere in some tiny controlled environment.
Yeah, I think like as you mentioned, the fact that you have something that you know what should come on the other side, for example, through tests or something like this,
Mm-hmm.
then it makes it easier for you to trust that it's not going to break something, right? Of course, can still happen, but the same way that AI can introduce bugs, we also as humans creating code, we also introduce a bunch of bugs, right? So it's not like we are always perfect. But it makes it easier, right? And I think for infrastructure, for example, as DevOps guys, right? Like if you write Terraform and you use AI to write Terraform the way that you do, nice that Terraform is more structured, right? So it's not like pure coding that then AI can go wild and create something weird. And then when you run a Terraform plan, for example, you're going to get a real validation of what was created. So then it's your responsibility to check settings, right? Like the attributes to see if nothing was set up in the wrong way. But I think in those cases, for example, it's also useful. So you can create infrastructure faster. And with this, with frameworks, let's maybe say like that, like Terraform, where things are more structured, right? So it's not like a free language. I think that helped, at least for me, a lot as well, to kind of build things faster in a way that's not like just randomly designed by AI without any thinking.
No, especially if you put some context to AI, I think it could be like as a next step is to adding extra context, documentation, or the Terraform docs. Because if we let AI read how resources in Terraform need to be created, it's going to be right, kind of the perfect Terraform. Because as Fernando mentioned, there's not that much ways in Terraform how to do stuff. It kind of define it. You're supposed to do it that way. And maybe to plug a bit more context about how things are built inside the organization is also helpful. Like, as you probably know about our tool, Boris, context layer for engineering teams, it could be very, very useful if you plug it to agent that you'll already know what is around. For example, you create a database inside your Terraform, but you know it's going to be connected to some other services somewhere, which is good. But so plugging the context, I think it's the next step, even before go wild with some skills or whatever else is in this rabbit hole of AI. So the context.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference to get something that's not. In my experience, I think it was a very similar thing, that journey basically that we are describing now, like doing something small, and then I was like, okay, let me try to create something new. Now I'm not refactoring an existing thing. I want to create something new. So that's where I tried like just winging it, because I see now, and this was like I don't know, 1.5 years ago or two, but even now I see people saying like, oh, the new thing now is like creating loops, right? So this is where, and then when you hear people that are not engineers, they're like, I start a Cloud Code session, Codex, whatever, and I say, create me a dashboard that does X, Y, Z. And then I go to the next one, create me an application that does another thing. And then you're just throwing things that then AI goes and just makes the decisions for you, right? About how that's going to be built, because it's trying to reach that, let's say, business goal or whatever it is that you decided as a functionality, rather than how that would work. That's not what I wanted. And then is where context indeed worked. And back then we didn't have something like Boris, for example, that can connect to AWS in our case and kind of pull real information so you understand actually what's running. But what I try to do is like, okay, what context on the way that I want this to be done can be passed to the agent so it follows my standard of doing things, right? And then, for example, just saying, hey, every time you write code, let's write the test first. Or if you're going to write Terraform, here is an example of a project that follows the structure that I want you to follow, right? And then it can look at something that already exists, and then it's very good at looking at that, recognizing patterns, and then kind of doing the same in the new thing. It could be policies, like you mentioned, Vlad, that are part of the company policy, right? So then you pass it down, and then you start to see that the output starts to improve quite a lot as you provide it with relevant information towards the goal that you want. And that could be your solution design, right? Like you design and you describe how you want that to be done in terms of like which technology to use or how the flow of information should go. But you don't need to go down into the details of how to write that code or how to write the Terraform module, whatever it might be. So I think that journey kind of helps you to start to trust it a little bit more and actually make it useful. I think in the end, in my experience, is like once you see that it is useful and you can rely on it, not 100%, like you wouldn't be able to rely 100% on a colleague as well, right? In a sense that they also might make a mistake in that sense, right? Not that you cannot rely on people, but it's like you ask a
but it's
colleague,
true.
hey,
It's
right?
true. Yeah, you use your common sense. Like, yes, your teammate obviously help you and would like to help as much as possible, but people can forget some tiny detail. And usually you find out something yourself and then return that information to your teammate. So like, it's, oh, this is maybe something is updated. Things are moving and so on. Plus, I think like it's what we would like to achieve. It's a ability to make the whole project is remain maintainable, because it's why trust is basically break, because AI do whatever they want in their own way of formatting Terraform. So all the code is in different files and somewhere. So it's we're losing the control. We're losing feeling that we can keep maintain that and can keep understand. So this is
I think that transition is an interesting one, right? Like because before, and I think we are in the process of understanding how that will be. I'm curious to hear your take as well. But just that before, like making readable code, let's take code or even infrastructure, like was very important because it's another person who is gonna look at that, and they need to understand how do you think about that design to kind of see what you wanted to do to then maybe extend it or fix it or whatever, right? Now, as it looks like we as like the engineers, we are moving one layer up where you stop looking at the code and now you start caring more about the outcome, right? Like the code, if is an AI agent that's going to look at it, actually you could think that variables like names could be much shorter. They could be like kind of what when you do like the bundles for front end applications, you have the uglify process, right? That it just writes like so you cannot understand, but the machine still can understand, right? And in my mind, like lately was coming these, like I don't think we are there yet, and that's where comes this trust challenge, the challenge with trusting what is there. But it looks like more and more we move towards like, hey, I don't want to care so much as how that is done anymore, as long as the outcome is what I expect. This is my impression, but I'm curious like to your take as well.
I like the moment with uglify, basically to make another machine to understand. I think this is what we would like to achieve by establishing the rules in how to create the code and so on, for let another machine understand that and continue improving in the same way. Because if you not establish any kind of rules in this AI adoption, every different AI agent from a teammate is gonna be improved in their own way.
And it becomes the salad that all mixed, right? True.
Yeah. But at the same time, like it's going to be multiplexed by the AI speed. Like as if it's a humans who not follow the guidance of the code writing, is degraded but kind of slowish. Maybe one person on the team don't care about the rules, but the rest is still care, so it's not that much degraded. But with the AI, it's the every next agent will follow on whatever was created by previous agent. It's gonna be multiple.
Yeah, and that can spiral out of control in a way like very fast, right? Because when we made now, I mean, a few minutes ago, that kind of correlation between working with a colleague, right? It came back to my mind the whole idea of a pull request review, right? Of a peer review. That was the idea. Hey, someone else wrote the code. You go take a look, see if you have a different take or if they didn't see something. In theory, I think you could approach AI the same way. Hey, go write the code. I'm going to review the PR and this is how it started, right? But then the speed comes into play indeed. And that is where it becomes tough because of the temptation to just say, let's just go with it, right? Like, and just go through. And if there is a problem, we can fix forward. And I have been seeing this more and more. Even like I mentioned before we started recording, like for me, it's always interesting the case of Anthropic, for example, the status page of Claude. If you go there, I don't know, man. Like a week, there is always like 3 red blocks at least. Like there is outages very often, at least my experience. But they keep moving fast, right? They fix forward and they keep going, and it keeps breaking and they keep fixing. While before, it wouldn't be at that pace, because if something breaks, until you fix it, a human needs to sit down, understand the logic, see where is the bug, and then it takes time, right? So there was a lot more care on how quickly we release things, while now is like push, 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 right? Like just go fast. And as you said, that if can spiral down into like a bad code becoming the reference for the next agent that keeps spreading that. But this is where I circle to back to what I was mentioning before. Like my impression is that then, as Anthropic seems in a way to be the case, as a reference, just as an example, that more and more they care about the outcome of the thing that's being built rather than how it's being built underneath from a technical perspective. I think even I heard like some interview that Claude Code as a harness has been rewritten multiple times from scratch, like because AI keeps rewriting it when they want it to work in a different way, which was never the way we would do it before, right? You would keep improving the existing thing. You wouldn't rewrite it from scratch.
You know, the rewrites, they actually exist, but much slower, because in every company it's become the thing when some version of software marked as a legacy, and now we're going to rewrite maybe in another language, in another version, or whatever. So it's this rewrite behavior, it still exists, because every software may reach the point where it's not possible to keep maintaining. It depends how it's go, but it may reach that point.
True.
But what we can do in this AI adoption journey as engineers, we can establish the controls, basically the conditions, because we talk about bad code, good code, how to decide what could code good, what is bad. So we can provide that information inside of this harness system. So
yeah, I think that is an interesting one, because I have been building something that start to get complex, right? And then I notice after like having built quite a big portion of it, I did kind of an audit to see the code, and I tried to take this approach, right? Like okay, let me try to move fast and focus on the outcomes, not to the level of detail that I realize I should have now, but on the outcomes without reviewing the code so much for the details, just to see what will happen. And as the code base started to grow, then I had guidelines written in the markdown files, be it from skills or agents, MD, whatever, and those got ignored as the code base started to grow. And even though like they are, let's say, recommendations, right, in a way. So then as I was doing that audit again with AI, like the outcome that we came was like, you can put those things in MD files and have that as instructions for the model, but those, let's say, are suggestions, right? Like that it might or might not follow. So ideally, we would have deterministic gates, right? Basically things like tests, for example, that they either pass or not, right? There is no, but the AI forgot that I want it to be done this way. The challenge is not everything can be validated in that way, right? I think it's difficult. Probably you cannot do it for everything. But a lesson that I learned is this: like if you can find ways to have more deterministic gates for quality, then you can start letting go a little bit more, so AI can do kind of more of the coding thing. You focus more on the outcome, the design, the domain, like what should be built, not the how, and then the gates that you should go through. That was kind of my recent experience with this thing about like having a little bit more of control over what it comes out on the other side without having to review everything, right? So I'm starting this new journey to see, okay, can I focus more on the domain, like on the outcome, at maybe a little bit higher level of detail to see if it improves. And I will bring back in the next episodes, like if that helped or not.
No, it looked like we are passing all of this AI adoption supposed to be go inside the whole software development lifecycle. Basically, we talk about the writing code, the tests. So basically, it will be bottleneck somewhere. Now it sounds like the QA department gonna be the next bottleneck because all the code is written fast, it's reviewed fast. Someone have to do just tiny validation. Is it correct or not?
It is true, right? And it was interesting, like during this investigation, because I had a gate that AI should write tests, right? Like do TDD. But what then was a conclusion later, which might not have followed in the TDD approach now as I'm talking about it, is that since the agent can look at the implementation, it can write code that reinforces the implementation, right? I mean, write a test that reinforces the implementation, which means you can have, like in that project, there was 97% coverage. So you have a lot of coverage, but still, if the logic in the test is not complete, then cool, you're covering a broken solution, right? Like that works technically, but from rules of the outcome, it's not correct. So indeed, I think QA will become more and more of a, how can we ensure quality here without bias, right? Because the agent being able to see the code base and writing tests for it becomes quite tricky to make that without like just reinforcing the implementation that exists.
Yeah. So it's look like every organization supposed to pass some kind of a journey in this AI adoption. It's not just a button, just enable AI for everyone. It's a different department, different teams, different type of engineers gonna have their own challenges in that AI adoption thing.
Yeah. So I think indeed, like by talking to people that are more in this level of management, what is becoming more and more clear is like, okay, you gave the tool to the engineers, but then now you need to help them learn how to use it efficiently, right? And of course, there will be engineers that are very curious and they are going to come up with their own process and they're going to figure it out. And then there are others that are more resistant to the change because that really changes the way they work or the thing that they actually enjoy doing, because some people really like to write the code, right, and do that. And so basically enabling them to use the tool is what would help, I think, a lot with this adoption journey. And as engineers, for us is to think maybe on a personal side, like we usually like to create stuff, to how can you start to practice for yourself, right? Maybe on a side project or something, and maybe take the steps that we discussed before, right? Like start with something maybe that you already created, how ask AI to optimize it, see what comes out of it. And then you maybe design an outcome of something you want to the level of detail that you think like, hey, this is the solution. This is my design. I want you to implement it, right? And then you start to get that fluency with AI, because at least from what I see, like it's going to become very, very hard to be a relevant engineer in the market if you don't at least have like a good knowledge. I wouldn't say fluency, but fluency is like really when you are very fluent at that. So, but if you at least understand how it works, what it can do for you, just trying to say, hey, I don't trust it, I don't want to use it, it's becoming harder, right? Because companies are expecting now that we bring some of that benefit to them.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. So, wow, I think that's it for this one. We wanted to bring a little bit of these insights. And if you have any questions or anything from your own journey to share with us, let us know. And thank you for listening to this episode. And I hope to see you in the next one.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.